Hey there, fellow chess improvers. Dane here, sort of awakening from my YouTube hibernation. Wanted to post a video here. Today, actually, we had a community class as part of our Improvers Club, and I shared an example that I think is super instructive, and it's the kind of example that you can apply in each and every one of your chess games. This is a game played by Anna Cramling, and I think this is a really, really instructive game. Anna's playing, I don't know, maybe it's like a 3-minute blitz game. She's probably streaming, but nevertheless, tremendous multitasker. Also is able to share a really instructive positional lesson here for us. So Anna is playing the black pieces. We get into a Queen's Gambit declined, all very typical moves. And after E3, Anna decides, there's many moves here. You can question the bishop, you can castle, tons of moves. Anna builds a pyramid with C6, creating this really nice light squared pyramid, making it super solid for black, not easy for white, to invade on the light squares. These pawns are doing a great job preventing that. So anyway, cool line. Anna builds the pyramid. After bishop d3, she castles, and then knight f3 is played. Now here Anna plays a really instructive move, and this is where the lesson really begins. She plays, as Aaron Nimzovich would put it, putting the question to the bishop, pushes the pawn, attacks the bishop. And let me flip the script. If you are white here, and your bishop is challenged, super tempting at the beginner level, and not just at the beginner level, to trade the bishop for the knight and be like, okay, let's get rid of that tension. When in doubt, this is such an important lesson, try not to trade unless you have a really clear reason, meaning if you're forced to do it, fine, or trade on your terms. Make sure that you feel that your trade is helping you accomplish something positive. So in this case, if you're not sure, which by the way, a majority of trades, you're not going to know whether it's going to be a great trade or a bad trade. Most trades are kind of a gray area. You're giving up something to get something else. Here, it's not obvious why you would want to make this trade. When in doubt, maintain the tension. So a good move here for white, bishop h4. And in this dynamic, I'm keeping the pressure against the knight. And the other thing is, notice black's bishop here, really useful, unpinning, unpinning and supporting the knight, but it's a little bit passive. It's not as active as its rival there. So the other cool benefit here is your opponent might get a little pushy, might decide to play g5. You say, no problem. You kind of just absorb the energy here. You move your bishop here, and the king is already castled. The mortgage has already been secured. The contract is signed. This is your house and there's no roof. Not a good idea. So going back, this is a good example of why you maintain tension. You're not sure if it's a good trade, so don't trade. And by keeping things tense, keeping things unclear, you're giving your opponent enough room to go wrong. And so to be transparent here, Anna's, a master, and her opponent is 900 rated. So let's also give white a little bit of slack. But hey, you're going to be playing your own 900s if you're, a newer player to the game and taking your next steps. 900s are going to be your bread and butter. You're going to be facing a lot of these players. And I would say these kind of moves are played maybe up to 12, 1300 at times, sometimes even higher. And so this first move, not technically a blunder necessarily, but my view is it's planting the seeds of tactical destruction. This was an unnecessary trade. Your dark squared bishop disappears, and now its rival takes over the dark squares and becomes a lot more active. Spoiler alert, think about this trade, the consequences of this trade. Let's see if Anna's bishop has anything to say on the newfound long diagonal later in the game. So white accepted the trade. Anna is trading on her terms, and that's what you're going to notice strong players do. They're often going to give the opponent the opportunity to keep trading. So what happens in the game? Castles, she trades. Okay, so she initiated a trade, kind of a double-edged trade, but a very instructive one. When we talk about the light squared pyramid, it's very solid, but you also have to wonder, well, what is this bishop going to do with its life, right? It seems like it's just blocked in every conceivable direction. Well, in the long run, you might push a pawn, just making some random moves, and move your bishop here, fianchettoing it on the long diagonal, c5, and maybe someday you'll take here. And all of a sudden, the bishop awakens. So that's often a strategy, is to develop the bishop, as odd as it looks here, since it's illegal, is to go on this long diagonal. And so Anna's idea is by capturing the downside, you're removing your central control on the light squares. You are opening up your queen, and that could be an interesting pressure point in the future. But the other reason she's doing it, bishop takes pawn, is she's gaining a tempo with b5. And notice that opens a window for the bishop. So after bishop d3, bishop b3 was played, bishop b7, h3, kind of a random pawn move. Anna activates her knight, doing great. And after rook e1, Anna has a choice. She could play the move a6. And this is not such a random pawn move as I would argue this one was, because now she's supporting the b5 pawn. So like if I just make a random move, now that this pawn is guarding its friend here, you can play c5, not leaving that pawn behind. It's protected. And you awaken your slumbering bishop here on the long diagonal. So that would have been an interesting way to play. But Anna came up with a different option and said, I'm going to play the other pawn break. I'm not going to play for c5. I'm going to first play e5. And again, this is a 3-minute game, so I'm spending a lot more time going through the game than it took to actually play it. But again, white has a choice to trade or not to trade. And when in doubt, don't trade. One maybe slight drawback to the way Anna played, and let's be clear, it's a blitz game, you're not going to play perfectly, is that maybe white could play knight e4. Put some pressure on the bishop here, look at some weakened dark squares. This would have been a good way to fight back and keep the game complicated. But what did white do instead? White traded, and that's a problem. By making this trade, yes, you are opening up the d file. Okay, you're opening a square for a knight, but the big problem is, look at Anna's knight. One move ago, it didn't have any forward squares across the 5th rank. Now that you make this trade, you awaken the knight, and if we go back again, hopefully not getting any motion sickness by me moving back and forth here, is the bishop is biting on granite. Look at that solid pawn chain, right? So the bishop, which was made more active thanks to an unnecessary trade, is still restricted. But the second you take here, and I take back, look at this. Now that diagonal is wide open for the bishop. So every trade that white is making is helping Anna. Anna is just reacting to these trades like, okay, go ahead and trade, right? No problem. And after queen d8, another trade by white. A key question here is, which rook should you use to capture the queen? And if you had a moment to think about it, the answer is clear. Of course, you capture the queen with the knight. Just kidding. You don't capture with the knight. You don't capture the queen, but you can play what we call a Zwischenzug. Before we talk about which rook, we're not in check yet. We're definitely going to take that queen one way or the other. But before we do, that queen was guarding the knight. Space left behind, you can throw in a Zwischenzug, an in-between move. Take the knight with check. So when the pawn captures back, we have an isolated pawn. We have this pawn island. That could be a weakness. And notice now that we played knight e5, the dark square bishop is roaring. So this would have been a really cool idea to also throw into the mix. But let's be clear, Anna's playing a 3-minute game. She's not going to play perfectly. And the move she played was great. So, okay, we could gain a little bit more by throwing it as Zwischenzug, an in-between move. But which rook? Oftentimes we have to decide which rook. In my experience, the answer is really easy. Pick one rook, and it's always the other rook that's better. Okay, a half joke, a half truth. If you've ever spent time trying to figure it out, you know it's not an easy choice. But one practical tip I'll give is when you're asking the question, which rook, ask the other rook how it feels. So, in other words, if I take with the F rook, how does this rook feel? I'd say not perfect. It's kind of blocked down all these files. Maybe there's an argument you could move the rook here and support c5 and open up the bishop. So not the end of the world, but I don't think the rook is feeling great. What about the A rook? Ask the other rook how it feels about its future. And here I think the rook would say, I'm okay. I could slide over here. That's a pretty open file. I'm doing pretty well. So Anna captured with the A rook. which I think is a little bit more practical. And after the move knight takes, another trade by white. Anna happily captures back. Now she has the two Bs buzzing down the diagonals. And look at the power of that bishop. And again, let's be fair. This is a blitz game, and Anna's playing someone rated around 900. So, they're not a master strength opponent. So definitely have to give them some slack. But after centralizing the knight, maybe looking here to attack the bishop, unfortunately, white didn't ask about the space left behind. And sure enough, as I forecasted earlier about that trade, the bishop shines down the long diagonal, captures a pawn, attacks the rook. Rook moves away. Does Anna trade? Absolutely not. She's not going to trade on the opponent's terms and let the rook dominate the d-file highway. Rooks want open lines. Don't give your opponent open lines. Anna recognizes, hey, the knight could meet with the rook here. Knight c5 could be a thing, and my bishop isn't that active. So she plays another beautiful positional move here, bishop a3, slicing through the diagonal. Now there's no knight d6, there's no knight c5. Everything's looking really good. And again, by not trading, you don't force your opponent's hand. This is kind of the art of master versus amateur. Try to do as little as possible. Let your opponent do the work. So in other words, she makes a good move, she improves and says, okay, your turn. How do you improve? And her opponent said, well, trading's been going okay so far. Why change? Keep trading. So now that trade awakens Anna's rook. She's doing a great job here, playing just solid positional chess and letting her opponent do the work. Here, white played bishop to c2. I could also mention if the trading policy continues, this might be the one time Anna would happily trade. And the reason why, she's already up material and she has these powerful bishops and a passed pawn. So it wasn't easy to maintain tension, with the rook attacking her rook. And if she moves away, then, the rook starts to take over. So I think there's a strong argument to trade. And then, you can centralize your king. You can start thinking about pushing a pawn, attacking this knight. And this is going to be a big problem. So if the opponent offered that trade, this might have been the one time Anna would have traded, but white decided to guard the knight. Anna says, okay, bishop is okay, rook is okay. The problem child in the Queen's Gambit decline, the light squared bishop. Let's invest in that bishop's future. c5. What a bright future it is now, opening up that long diagonal, putting pressure on the knight. And what does white do? Offers a trade. And it's very important to remember, just like me, bishops and other chess pieces are terrible jugglers, terrible multitaskers. Here the bishop is overworked. It's guarding both the knight and the rook. The rook is attacking our rook, so we can play, as Anna did, rook d1, trades the rooks, and when the bishop takes, space left behind, boom, captured the knight. f3, attacks the bishop. Anna moves back, and then look at her pawn's roll. f5, really instructive move. Notice the bishop is completely restricted. And just like the bishop here was having some problems and she opened up a line, she does the same with f5. Immediately puts pressure here. And this is the one time white actually didn't trade, pushed forward. f4, exclam, great move by Anna. Opening up the bishop and tightening the screws kind of around the king here on the dark squares. And so after the bishop moves to e2, what does Anna play? c3, gives up a pawn. Remember, in the endgame, it's not all about material. It's not all about hold on to as much material as possible. When you get to the endgame, it's like, what do you need to win? Run the race, cross the finish line, promote your pawn into a queen. It's exactly what she does, gives up a pawn, she promotes, and then now a really instructive moment, attacking in isolation, like a queen by itself or a bishop by itself, can be strong. But look at this. The pawn says, hey, queen, I've got your back. Coordinating the power of the queen and the pawn. And when the king moves away, now the queen is supercharged by the bishop. So now we create this really nice queen-bishop battery, threatening check here, checkmate there. Not good news. And after king f1, Anna delivered mate. So I hope you enjoyed today's discussion of this blitz game played by Anna Cramling. And the main lessons to take is, well, the main lesson to take is not to take. That's the takeaway. Don't take, don't capture unless you have a really good reason. She built her pyramid. She castled, put the question of the bishop. Here, white, when in doubt, it's not clear why this is a good trade. Maintain the tension. White began a capturing policy that slowly but surely turned a snowball into an absolute avalanche of an attack for Anna. The bishop became active. She captured on c4 in order to liberate her light-squared bishop. And after some developing moves, e5, notice white had the chance to keep the game complicated with like knight e4, maybe rook c1. But white said, hey, I'm playing a strong player. Trade. Getting into a simpler position doesn't make it simple to play. And in fact, each trade here made it more difficult for white, because look at all these trades. Each trade is awakening Anna's pieces, improving her pieces, and white's active pieces, they vanish, right? So she gets the bishop pair, takes a pawn, slides over to restrict the knight, another trade, another victory for Anna, takes over the d-file, and after c5, that really instructive overworked bishop, the one time Anna initiates the trade, wins a piece, and she went on to win the game. So thanks again for joining me. If you're part of our Improvers Challenge on chess.com, feel free to reach out, ask a coach, ask the community forum. I'm very active there and just want to really thank you for your time and happy to support one another on our road to chess improvement. So thanks again. This is National Master Dane Matson, and I'll see you around.